Let's go.
First question is, who are you? Instead of saying, hey, my name is John, can you be like, I'm the two-time open mic comedy king? Go for it, brother. What's your name?
Well, I am John, two-time Brothers Open Mic Challenge winner Taylor, and I'm doing the interview for Eric Escobar.
Perfect. John, how long have you been doing comedy?
Total 4 years. Recently 2 years steady though. I've been doing comedy a total of 4 years, but I recently been doing it for 2 years steady.
Perfect. What do you feel defines a comic? Like, what makes someone a comedian?
I think anybody who creates what defines a comic is anybody who creates their own original content and brings it to stage. That's what I think a comic is. I give that credit like to comedians, to people who go on stage, and then funny people online, not so much comedians, but just funny people online.
Perfect. So I've done them, I know you've done them. We do some pretty shitty shows.
Right.
We do some pretty shitty mics. Can you talk a little bit about some of the weirdest, kind of worst rooms you perform in, and a little bit how that has affected your psyche, or emotional health, or mental health?
Some of the worst rooms I've performed in. One of the most unique rooms I've performed in is this open mic called Marty's, where it was nothing but comics in the audience. We actually had homeless people living outside, right outside the door, and a guy playing piano inside who would just say the most pervy things you ever heard. But it's actually one of the places where I honed my skill and was able to get a lot of practice in. Another place I did a show, I had another comic point a dildo at me halfway through a set. That was kind of weird. And then, of course, just some of these dive bars where nobody's even listening and they're playing slot machines. Vegas has a couple of those rooms.
How did it make you feel?
Stupid. I felt stupid when I was doing those rooms. But also felt like I'm going to reminisce on this one day. It's going to be worth it. So I appreciate the grind.
Cool, perfect. Can you talk a little bit about kind of like your comedy scene, the rooms you've done, the places you kind of hang out most often? What would you say is like the vibe and the culture and kind of like what's the vibe of those places?
My comedy scene and the rooms that I've done so far, I'm actually just getting up wherever I can. So my scene is pretty diverse. I've done shows in Hesperia, California, where I didn't even know where the place was until I'd been there. Of course, I'm on Sunset a lot for every mic, downtown Los Angeles, the Valley. I've done shows in Miami. I've done shows in Vegas. So I'm just going where there's a mic. I'll do bar mitzvahs, baby showers, divorces, Klan rallies, whatever you need. Just give me a mic. That's my scene.
So many comics, or I would say so many artists are very valued. You bring in a musician, they're paid out really, really well. You bring in a play, actors getting paid. Comedy, we're not getting paid a lot.
Right.
Can you talk a little about that? Like, can you talk about how comics are undervalued and how that may affect us mentally or emotionally?
I think comics are very undervalued, and I think that affects you mentally and emotionally because comedy is, first of all, getting on stage is one of the hardest things to do. And a lot of people don't have that gift or that skill or even that want. We're doing that, we're doing a good job, and then we're asked to promote the show, we're asked to bring people to the show, and usually we don't get a cut, or if we do get a cut, it's something we could have done ourselves. And unfortunately, a lot of comics use other comics for this, and it's not fair. So it can really weigh on you emotionally to put so much hard work into something, not seeing the return, and have to do it, and it doesn't really lead anywhere. So that can definitely weigh on you as time goes by.
Have you experienced depression, anxiety, anything like that yourself prior to or while you've been a comedian?
I've definitely experienced depression, anxiety, everything like that, and I'm going to go ahead and say probably 100% of the comics experienced depression and anxiety prior to doing this. This is our therapy. We can't afford therapy, so we find the humor in it. Well, at least I do. And most comics do. If you listen to most comics, especially the really good ones, they're telling you some story where life wasn't going right, and they were like, am I going crazy? And then they kind of found the humor in it. And I think that comedy and open mics and that kind of things are very therapeutic, and I actually encourage anybody who has depression to just talk it out. Going on stage is very liberating. It helps deal, and there's a lot of people who can laugh because they've been in that situation or something similar.
You're doing awesome, man. These answers are prime. They're really prime. It's weird because I'm asking a question and I'm looking at the next question. You're like answering it.
It's 3 questions.
Because I was gonna be like, oh, have you seen other comics feel it? And you're like 100%. And then I was like, well, do you feel it's sort of therapy? And you're like, yeah, it's therapy. I'm like, oh, this is great. Perfect. Can you talk a little bit about why you feel? So when I started this project, there's a lot of research, a lot of articles, a lot of like kind of written work on actors who have mental illness, on poets who have mental illness, writers with mental illness. Other than a few podcasts, there's not a lot of information out there on why comics are so depressed and why it's so rampant in our community. Can you talk a little bit about why maybe we're not really seen like in that way, or why there isn't a lot of research on there? Like it's so kind of crazy why there's such a high percentage of us who have it, but like the information's out there. Why do you think that's the case?
When it comes to the numbers of comics not being, I guess, including groups of mental illness and depression, comics tend to walk a fine line of the true to the extreme. So maybe the situations we paint on stage, the audience is laughing, not realizing that something very close to this has happened, and think, okay, it's just a joke. Or they can see us smile through it and make it to a joke, and they're like, oh, okay, he's not depressed, he's having a good time. So I think we're different, comics. Yeah, like to go up there, to bare your soul, to tell something really true to happen to you personal, where it didn't go right, and then to have the audience laugh at you, or even hope they laugh at the experience, is different than, say, an actor who goes to therapy, tells a psychologist in something very private setting. We're in bars talking about this. We're in bowling alleys talking about this. It's kind of hard to say, I think that guy has depression when, he's at a party scene. So I think that's the reason why we don't get sort of the credit for having depression, but it's very real.
Do you think depression in comedy is a little romanticized?
Romanticized? Like glorified, or what do you mean?
Yeah, like I don't know. This is more of a personal opinion, and I'm putting a little bit of like on that, but I feel just like now it's kind of cool when you're like a sad comic, and like sad comics are getting a lot of specials, and a lot of specials are about being like sad.
Ooh.
Like, do you think like being depressed is like weirdly somehow like marketable now, or like sexy now in the comedy world?
I don't know. I don't know if sad comedy is being romanticized. I think of like Greg Giraldo, who would have like that depressed comedy, but very hilarious. I don't know too many. I guess I don't know too many comedians to speak on the topic. I don't know too many comedians to speak on the topic.
Bringing up Greg Giraldo, I think a lot of us at this like lower to mid level, it sucks. But then you have people at the higher level, like Greg Giraldo, like Robin Williams, who still have depression.
Right.
Like, why do you feel...
Oh, Pete Davidson too, right?
Pete Davidson,
okay,
yeah.
There we go.
Why do you feel like so many, even successful comics, still experience depression?
That's a really good question, especially with the Pete Davidson situation. And of course, I'm on the outside looking in. Oh, man. Because it seems like if you get to that status, like, okay, depression's gone. But it just shows you how much it can affect somebody. Me personally, I don't know. I try to turn my depression into comedy. I try to make it as non-affecting to me so that I'm numb to it, but not to the point where I don't realize, hey, this is a very serious issue and I need to deal with it. But when I can write a joke about it, I feel a sense of accomplishment, like I can almost cope with the issue. So that's kind of my freedom. Once I can really find humor in it, and I have the situations in my comedy, like my brother died unexpectedly, and I of course I grieved, but I also like wrote to it, and that was part of me getting over my brother. That was part of the grieving period, was to write the joke. So I think it's just different for every comic. But for me personally, when I write a joke, when I can make something kind of positive out that bad experience, that really helps me with a very serious issue or a very grave issue.
That's awesome. That's great. Have you lost anyone in the comedy scene, or have you heard of other comics being passed away in your scene? And why do you think that's... Or have you?
I have, me personally, I have not lost anybody in the comedy scene. I am in a lot of Facebook groups And so I'll hear of a friend or a comic, and I'll see how it affects different comics. It is weird because this is like middle school for us, and not middle school in the sense of like the class, but you change periods. You see the same kind of comics at different mics, and okay, I got this guy fourth period, I got this guy fifth period, or this guy's at this bar, this guy's at that bar, and then now that person you don't see him anymore. It can be strange. It can be, but I haven't had it happen to me personally. But just to see what goes on in the groups and the postings, it definitely takes a toll on other comics because a lot of these guys, they carpool or they make plans or they host together, and now that's not happening anymore. So it's a ripple effect. It definitely affects the whole community when one's gone.
Do you think comedy attracts people with these pre-existing conditions of anxiety or mental illness or depression, and why? Or why not?
I definitely think comedy attracts people with depression or pre-existing mental illnesses, and I think it attracts people on both sides. I think obviously the performers are speaking from a point of pain, but anybody that's going through any type of hardship, the one thing you want to do eventually is laugh, and so that kind of fills our business too. You're having a bad day, you broke up with your girl, you lost everything, you just want to go somewhere, forget about it, and you can go to a comedy club or you can go to an open mic, and you can usually find somebody who can just make you forget and just make you laugh, and that's what I love about it. You can walk in with your worst day and walk out hearing the best joke, and that's within 5-10 minutes, and hopefully that happens to a lot more people than the other avenue where you just stay depressed or nothing good comes from it. So definitely I think comedy attracts misery, but it also helps.
Do you think the comedy lifestyle that talked about earlier, Weird Bar, stuff like that, Facebook groups, people kind of way, do you think that may possibly heighten depression or anxiety within comedians?
Heighten? Do I think that comedy heightens depression in comedians? No. I'll tell you why. Because I think if you're depressed and you're by yourself, you kind of let your mind wander. You don't really have anybody else telling you, hey, it's going to be okay, or you can't see anybody else going through the same situation. If you and another comedian are going through it, chances are if there's other people going through it, you guys can talk about it, now you can laugh about it. And now you're not alone. And that's, I think, one of the worst feelings is the feeling of loneliness. So you go to an open mic, there's other people, hey man, how was your day? You're talking about it, you're laughing about it. I really think it helps. I would say comedy helps, not heightens.
Beautiful. That's great. That was the other question. How have you, or mostly I would say, how have you observed other comics cope with their depression specifically comics? How have you seen them cope with all this shit that's going on inside?
Yeah, I would say most comics cope with their depression. I've seen people come straight, like I said, straight from, getting broken up with a girl. They get on stage and they go, I literally just broke up with a girl, or I literally just got evicted, or, I just lost my job. The stage is such a release, and it helps to cope with any issue because once you walk on that stage, you kind of become a comedian in a sense, so you take on a different persona. I'm John and in every other aspect of my life, but I'm John Taylor when I walk on stage, and John Taylor can make jokes, John Taylor can laugh, John Taylor can find the funny, whereas maybe John has to deal with it. So yeah, I think most comedians write to their problems, deal with it directly, and that helps rather than letting it simmer and become something bigger. We can just address it right there in that group and make it fun somehow.
Just 2, 3, maybe more questions. I want you to talk about how good it feels when you get that laugh, when you get the applause break, when you get that good show, and how do you keep that feeling going, or how have you seen other comics keep that feeling going?
Whenever I'm doing a show and I get a joke that gets an applause break or a laugh, it's one of the best feelings in the world. Because whenever you write something on paper, or whenever you think of something in your mind, you're like, okay, of course it's funny to you because that's you. But when you can make a room full of people feel it, and a room full of people that you met for the first time, it's just something special because they are in your mind now. to the place where you're like, okay, this is something I thought on a crazy 2 a.m. Thursday night because I was going through it, and here we are in a, like a comedy club, or maybe there's 5 people on this, or there's 500, and they're all hitting. I love it. I love it. I live for it. That's what I go for. And then I just try to like capture that feeling, capture that mindset, and keep going with that vein, same vein of thought, same line of thinking, and squeeze everything out of that situation. And you do that enough, you got a special. You do that enough, you got your whole set. So that's what I do whenever I get that applause break. I milk it. I live for it. I write for it. Main reason I do comedy.
Then last question. Last question we have. As gross and annoying and horrible as comedy can be, we all keep coming back to it. No matter if we go to Marty's on one night, we're still going to Marty's because we love it. Why? Why is it something that's like so bad and so grueling, you don't feel that credit? Why do we all keep coming back? Why do you keep coming back?
What else are we gonna do? If we don't keep coming back to comedy, what else am I gonna do? I actually, and I'm glad you brought that question up, because when I say I've been doing comedy for 4 years and 2 years last Eddie, I started when I was about 21, 22, did it for 2 years and I stopped. And then it wasn't until I was about 30 that I came back. So I'm 33 now, so 31 for the last 2 years I've been doing steady. Every day between the day I had stopped and the day I came back, I was thinking of jokes, I was thinking of ideas, even though I didn't even know if I was gonna come back to comedy. It is addicting. I really can't stop thinking about jokes. I can't stop writing jokes. And even if it's, like I said, Marty's with 2 people in the audience, or a packed club with 3, 4, or whatever, 100 people in the audience, you want somebody to feel it. You want somebody to understand it. And you want to share it. What good are great ideas if nobody hears them? So that's what the comics are thinking about. This stuff is gold. You don't want to just keep the gold for yourself if you can give it out and let the audience enjoy it. So I don't care where I go up. I just want to go up. I don't care. I mean, right now I don't care if you pay me. I just need the opportunity. And I also know that I'm building my skill to one day where I can, be in a position where this is going to make me money financially. Or this is going to get my name out there to the people who need to see me. So it's an addiction. It's a long-term game, but it's something I live for. And I pray I never stop telling jokes. That's just what I want to do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, man. That was